Very along with my compadres, Mr. Gary Haddow, Mr. Andrew Cooper, tonight. We've been waiting for this for a long time. Tonight's going to be a battle akin to something out of Game of Thrones. Okay.
Battle of the Bastards.
Well, no, I do have a dad. But we do have a fantastic guest. That is somebody that I have wanted to have on and wanted to have the chance to talk to. Have done it through the DMs, but not face to face or screen to screen here. Mr. Dave Kluge from Football Guys. Dave, my friend, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fantastic. This show has been a long time coming. You and I talk all the time. We've done mock drafts together. We've wanted to do this show for a long time, and I'm glad that it is finally coming to fruition. This is going to be an absolute blast.
Oh, yeah.
I am so excited. We got Mr. Zero RB Truther, Kevin Tompkins. We got the Zero Wide Receiver Truther, Dave Kluge. We have God bless Gary and God bless Coop because, it's going to be an epic throwdown here of draft ideologies. That's the word of the week here. I don't have a Dave Barry calendar, but it's looking good here. So I will say we have an underdog draft tonight with some of the best and brightest of the fantasy football community that are waiting on standby for when Dave enters the draft. But before we do that, I just want to get a couple boilerplate things here. So if you are not subscribed to us on YouTube, go ahead and do so. You have even more incentive to do so now, because if you want in Scott Fishbowl 11, we are going to be giving away a spot on Friday night. So what you'll need to do, go to my pinned tweet at KTompkinsII. What you will need to do is screenshot your subscription to our YouTube channel, Lightning Round, youtube.com/Lightning Round. Tweet it at me or tweet it at Gary or tweet it at Coop. And we will enter you into a drawing on Friday night for a Scott Fishbowl 11 spot. You want to battle the Scott Fishbowl 9 winner, Mr. Gary Haddow? There's your chance. So also check us out on Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere else that you get your podcasts. And also our good friends over at Viridian Global have Lightning Round merchandise. So go over to their site, viridianglobal.com. Click on Football Collective, find Lightning Round. If you purchase some of our gear, put in Lightning Round and the code screen for 25% off of your purchase. Mr. Dave Kluge, you can go ahead and enter the draft when you get a second there, and then we will be off and running. And I'm going to turn this over, the festivities, to our Lester Holt of the evening, Mr. Gary Haddow.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Ooh, I have the 102. That's quite exciting for me.
I've got the 104, which is my least favorite pick here.
So quickly, we have about a minute before we start. So, Dave, give yourself a quick pump in 1 minute or less where we can find your written works.
Phrasing, Gary.
Yeah, quick pump in 1 minute or less. You can find me on Football Guys and Fantasy Pros. And that's pretty much it. Really, what I tell people is just find me on Twitter. That's the easiest way to see what I've got going on. I'm doing a lot of guesting on shows. I'm doing guest articles for other websites. So just give me a follow on Twitter at Dave Kluge, and you'll see what I am up to. A lot of best ball right now. This time of year has just been best ball.
I have a question for you guys, actually, while we have a minute here before we kick off, or a couple seconds. So one thing that a lot of people wonder, in your opinion, I know it might depend on format, how deep do you need to go before you take a running back or wide receiver for it to be considered still a zero running back or zero wide receiver? How do you guys feel about that?
I've heard some people say that you need to go into like your 6th or 7th round without even touching it. I think that is a little bit extreme. I usually try to go out of I'll usually look at my first wide receivers in the 4th or 5th round. Something else I should say, for the spirit of this show, I will absolutely be sticking very firmly to zero running back. But also, you don't want to lock yourself into a preconceived notion. If I'm sitting there in the late 2nd and DeAndre Hopkins or A.J. Brown, somebody's still available, I'm going to take them. But, in the spirit of the show, I will be hardcore, and I'm going to wait at least 5 rounds before I start looking at any wide receivers tonight.
Now, when you take a DeAndre Hopkins in the 2nd, at that point, are you now doing a modified zero wide receiver?
Ooh. I believe that's what they call it. Yeah. And the reason I like to, talk about zero running back and zero wide receiver and this, it's a really easy way to quantify a draft strategy for people that are new to fantasy football. So if you've been playing for a while, you know that you've got to play what comes to you. You've got to work the board however the players fall, and you can't lock yourself into something. But for somebody that's never played fantasy football before, I like to say, hey, try to go in with this approach, because I think that it just is going to give you the best results over the course of a season.
And that makes sense.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah. Drafts can go so many different ways, and you need to have, some kind of frame of reference where if X happens, well, I can do Y. If A happens, I can do B. So, knowing that you can construct a roster in many different ways is going to help you no matter what.
Agree. And that's what I do, is that even though I won't necessarily tell my followers, I won't say definitely do 0 RB or definitely do 0 wide receiver. I say, look at Kevin Tompkins, look at Dave Kluge, and see who the targets are for late rounds. So if you find yourself in that situation where you draft a bunch of guys based on best available, you know who the targets are and you can pivot to those strategies,
Right. And
yeah, 12 seconds, Coop. Sorry.
Yeah, I got it.
All right. And I did take Aaron Jones as well, too. So going to go with the it's been bandied about the hero RB.
I couldn't believe it, dude. I had him queued up. That's why I went down to the
wow.
All right. Hero RB. That is a fantastic terminology for it. I'm loving that.
All right. So Brown drops me in the second then. No, I'm sticking with it, man. I'm sticking with the running backs early.
As far as I'm concerned, Kluge just won this entire competition.
It only took 4 minutes, so I mean,
and we're done. You can find us on Twitter at
Aaron Jones is my RB4 going into this year, though. So getting Aaron Jones, I don't understand why he's dropped. I mean, I understand why people are scared that Aaron Rodgers is going to leave, whatever it may be. But Aaron Jones is an absolute stud. This guy's put up 2 straight years finishing top 5. And for some reason, people are still ranking him outside of the top 10 going into this year. I just can't wrap my mind around it. It makes no sense to me.
30 touchdowns in 30 games. I mean, come on.
At a certain point, that term, this guy can score from anywhere on the field. But Aaron Jones really is somebody that could score from anywhere on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's potential for even more passing game work without Jamal Williams there too. So I'm not going to factor in AJ Dillon for really much of an uptick in receiving work. So it's got to go somewhere. And I think Aaron Jones is going to see more of the field, in passing downs, that you did see Jamal Williams kind of spell him on third downs and long down the distance and things like that. So I think that's just going to even boost his floor more. I've got him in RB6.
Since you mentioned A.J. Dillon, I mean, that's the one thing that does scare me just a little bit, because Aaron Jones has been very efficient in the red zone. And I'm worried that A.J. Dillon does take those goal line, those really valuable touches away from him. But still, I mean, I think it's because he's a 6th-round pick. People don't want to talk about how talented he is, but he's up there with Kamara. When you're looking at slipperiness and strength and balance, he is that good. And people just still, Chris Carson, Aaron Jones, every single year, people are finding reasons to knock on him for something.
Yeah, at this point, I was a big Chris Carson knocker, and at this point, I got nothing to knock the guy for. I mean, when you talk about guys that drop or fumble the ball, it only matters if the coach loses faith in him, and the coach has never lost faith in Chris Carson. So, I mean, what can you really say?
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is fumbles. He had 1 fumble last year. He had that one stretch of games where I think it was 4 fumbles in 3 games, and that was just something for all of the Chris Carson haters to just jump on and say, yeah, I told you this guy's a bum, blah, blah, blah. But he's not. He's going to be just fine.
Sorry, I'm now on the clock and just trying to figure out what I want to do.
Tight ends went early here.
Good.
I'm going to pull up the board here. Yeah, I mean, Kittle, you don't see Kittle go 112 very often. And then Waller in the mid, yeah.
And so I wanted to ask.
I'm going to take him right here. I love taking Chris Carson in the 3rd. Chris Carson in the 3rd is pretty much my lock in every best ball draft. I'm currently at 68% exposure on Chris Carson. I've got him as my RB12 right now. And I mean, sure, he's going to miss a couple of games to injury, but every running back does. And I just don't get the disrespect. There aren't many people that have him ranked as an RB1, but I'm very confident in having Chris Carson ranked as an RB1.
RB12 feels, honestly, I feel like we're pulling hairs at that point, but I mean, he's probably closer to 14, 15 for me, because he tends to always finish there, presuming he actually does stay for the majority of the season. then he always just kicks some ass. But I wanted to, anybody that's listening that's not familiar with zero RB, zero wide receiver, I don't know how you're watching this podcast and you've never heard of this stuff before, but let's kind of get it back to the basics of, let's start with, Dave being here, you kind of addressed a little bit earlier. What's the base premise of zero wide receiver and why you would want to do that as a strategy?
Well, I think that, anybody that's been watching football for, the last decade can tell that it's becoming a more pass-heavy league. And because of that, the running backs are just getting thinner and thinner and thinner. You look 10 years ago, every single team had a guy that was going to get 200 carries, 250 touches. And now those guys are very, very rare and they're tough to find. So in addition to the running backs getting thinner and thinner, the pool for receivers is getting deeper and deeper. Last year, 50% of the guys that finished as wide receiver ones were drafted outside of the 5th round. I don't have all of them off the top of my head, but Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. These guys all were drafted after the 5th round and put up wide receiver 1 finishes. And that's a story that we see every single year. And this year, there's a lot of guys that I think could finish as RB1s again that are getting drafted outside of the 5th round. Cortland Sutton, Deontay Johnson, Tyler Lockett still is falling after putting up another wide receiver 1 season. So, I just think that the pool for wide receivers is so much deeper. And then the floor for the guys that you're getting in the later rounds as a wide receiver is so much higher than the floor that you're getting in the running back pool. So I'm okay just locking in my running backs early, getting 3 or 4 in the first few rounds so I don't have to worry about running backs for the rest of the year, and then just loading up on wide receivers. And if I can go out of an 18-round draft with 9 or 10 wide receivers, I'm happy because I know that 2 or 3 of those guys at least are going to be able to be week in and week out starters for me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even subscribe to zero wide receiver, but I'm right now. I just took 3 running backs, and I'm still getting Mike Evans right now as we speak as my first wide receiver, and he's never not had 1,000 yards. So, like Kluge's saying, they're there,
Sorry.
I was just gonna say, you touched on it at the beginning, but I really do miss the golden age of fantasy football back in the early 2000s. Wasn't that fun? Just lock and load, first round, everybody is getting 350 touches. Like, it was so easy back then.
Yeah, I mean, you could get a guy in the 4th round that was still like he wasn't going to be great, but you knew the team was going to give him 250 touches, and those guys don't exist anymore. And sure, they're going to pop up on waivers, and I know that that's the argument for going zero RB is you're going to have your Mike Davises and your James Robinsons pop up, but man, like I'm looking at the start that I have right now: Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, Chris Carson. I have all 3 of those guys ranked within my top 12, and I am happy with those 3. So typically what I do, this is where I'd pivot to wide receiver a lot of the times, because in the 4th round of these drafts, you get guys like Julio Jones, DJ Moore, Robert Woods that are still available. And I'm very confident taking those guys as my RB1s, or I'm sorry, my wide receiver ones, because, and I don't know who's watching the show, but there's one guy left that is before my big fall off. So if this guy is still available, I'll go with one more running back here. But I don't know what Fred's going to do with this pick.
It's a good thing just in case. Got to strategize. Well, now I want to wait to see what he does with the pick before I ask my next question.
Yeah. In the meantime, why don't we break down what we have so far? Kev, what do you have so far for your composition of your team?
I did kind of stack Mahomes and Hill. I took the first quarterback, hoping to kind of start a run in the 4th, and Josh Allen went off. So did Lamar Jackson. So happy to see, maybe a couple guys drop into the 5th here. But I also have Aaron Jones as my anchor running back, and then I have Tyreek Hill and Allen Robinson. So 2 of my top 12 wide receivers. Tyreek Hill can be considered wide receiver 1 in some circles. Allen Robinson is a tried and true, just a target monster. Very happy right now.
Gary?
Sorry, I'm making my pick right now, and then I would jump right back to it. So my roster so far: Dalvin Cook with CEH, Calvin Ridley, and Deontay Johnson. And I mean, I feel like all these guys just have such supreme upside with, CEH in particular being almost like a post-hype sleeper right now. Calvin Ridley, if Julio moves on, is going to be the number 1 and looks like a total stud. Obviously, there's Dalvin, and then Deontay. What is it, 160 targets in 13 games, I think it was last year? Like, the dude just looks like he's primed for such an amazing season yet again. So if he can fix some of those drops, stay a little bit healthier, the guy could easily be a top 10 wide receiver. And I'm getting him in almost back of the 4th.
Easy. Kluge, What do you got?
So far, I've got Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, and Chris Carson, and then the Julio Jones pick in the 4th round. I mean, that's just too good a value for me to pass up. If Julio Jones was picked, I would have gone with a running back there. I would have been totally happy taking Josh Jacobs. But when Julio Jones was sitting there in the 4th round, whether he's with Atlanta or playing anywhere else, when he's healthy, he is a bona fide wide receiver one of the best in the league. And people are getting scared of his age, but I am more than happy to build a team around Julio Jones as my wide receiver one.
Yeah,
and now Josh Jacobs still dropped me. So I got my 4th running back there, and I am done with running backs. I won't touch another running back for the rest of the draft. I got Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, Chris Carson, Josh Jacobs, and that's it for me. I'm not even going to waste a single late pick. Now I just hammer wide receivers for all the mid rounds.
It's definitely, honestly, probably the preferred strategy that, as I've just been listening to you guys and other stuff, that I think that with most best balls, that's how I end up doing, is at least doing either 3 or 4 running backs right there to start, and then just going from there. If one of the elite wide receivers for some reason fell to me in the 2nd round, which I think that Calvin Ridley is going to get up there, then definitely falls there. Kevin, I want to know kind of the counterpoint. So, you're the 0 RB man of the show, and we just heard Kluge talk about the merits of 0 wide receiver. I have to say it's pretty enticing just to go RB robust to begin. Why should we be pivoting away from that and going 0 wide receiver? Drop some knowledge on us.
So a couple cruxes, a couple things I like to put out there for people, because it is very divisive, on Twitter and otherwise. I look at one thing is the average ADP of running backs, which since 2016 has just shot up, exponentially. I mean, running backs are going earlier and earlier and in bigger volumes. Just since 2016, the average bottom end RB2, and I'm going to pause real quick while I make my pick, and I'm going to take TJ Hawkinson here, who I think is primed for about 135, 140 targets this year. At the end of the 5th, I love that. But back to 0 RB stuff. Running backs are just going earlier and earlier, and not only that, the injury rates of the running backs that are drafted in the top 24. Josh Hermsmeyer did a lot of work with injury rates on RotoViz. That are about 200 to 360% more likely to suffer a serious injury. And this is meaning a 4+ week injury versus wide receivers of the same ADP. The more flexes that you have in a league, the more I will just absolutely hammer wide receiver from top to bottom. They do outscore running backs in every ADP outside of the top half of the 1st round. And just embracing fragility at the position, drafting high leverage running backs. There's only a finite amount of massive touch running backs, which I'm very happy to draft if I get an early spot. But, roster construction's buoyed by those running backs with high draft capital. They're more prone to losing the upside that you're looking to get, at the beginning of the season when you're looking to score the most points, because that's what we're looking to do. I'm going to pause real quick because we are going to time out here. I don't want to do that, but I'm going to take Jamar Chase at the beginning of the 6th round. You're looking to score the most points. That's fantasy right there. You're looking to score more points than the other person. You're looking to score more points than everybody else in the league. Embracing that fragility with lower end running backs versus those higher end running backs that tend to get hurt more often, you're going to already have the backups. You're already going to have those guys that have avenues toward bigger work. We're seeing guys like James Robinson, who last year was virtually undrafted and then became a top 10 running back. And then you also have like guys like Myles Gaskin, and then very, very usable running backs, Salvon Ahmed. The list goes on with running backs that you could just find off of, waivers or find with Fab. So there are running backs that you can find everywhere. It's much easier to find usable running backs at the end, on waivers or, at the end of drafts and being able to pick them up before the season begins than it is wide receivers who are going to get 100+ targets.
Yeah, I will say from my experience that 0 RB is a bit harder in best ball. And in general, it's the harder strategy because you need to work harder. You know what I mean? Yep. Like Sean Siegel, he pretty much invented it. And last year he was in my Scott Fishbowl. His first RB he drafted was Kerryon Johnson in the 11th round. right? But he managed to draft James Robinson, but he in the first early weeks he used pretty much all his fab early, getting guys like Salvin Ahmed, like you mentioned, certain guys that picked up his bootstraps. And for any beginning fantasy player out there that's looking at these strategies, just know that when you do zero RB or you do zero wide receiver, you need to actually know more about those positions than the average person does. So to be a guy like Kluge who's going to wait on wide receiver or Kevin Tompkins, you need to know the deeper players, because you can't just not draft guys, right? Like you might be able to punt tight end to get away with it, but you need to find these guys somewhere. So you actually need to, it's not just, I'm just going to not draft running backs. That's how I do zero RB. It's more like you need to know all the guys that could emerge and all the guys that are, the handcuffs. You have to be deep in the running back to actually do it. So it's kind of counterintuitive to what people think. They think, I won't draft wide receivers, so I'll do zero wide receiver. It's the opposite. You got to know all about these late guys.
Yeah, and that's why I think best ball is especially kind of tough to go zero running back with, because a lot of the times these guys that pop up mid-season in redraft leagues are people that, like, I'm going to be completely honest. Salvin Ahmed, that was a name that I didn't know before the season started. James Robinson was somebody that I heard about, a month before the season. So a lot of times these guys that are popping up, you can spend your fab on and you can get them. But I feel like in best ball especially, it's really tough because you don't have waivers to play. The team that you're picking is the team that you're stuck with for the entire season. So that's another reason in best ball that I especially like to, really attack running backs early. And then you look at the value of some of the later round guys. So, I took with my first 3 picks and my 5th pick, I went with running backs, and I was still able to get Julio Jones, Chase Claypool, and Deebo Samuel as my top 3 wide receivers. And I'm more than happy with that wide receiver core.
Yeah, that definitely provides a floor with some upside. Deebo, depending on if you're Kevin or I, Kevin's going to say he's a floor play, and I try to be more optimistic as a diehard Niners fan. Julio, obviously, we just kind of wait and see what's going to happen, but assuming that he's still going to be there. And then Chase Claypool, feels like the sky's the limit for what he could potentially become. We've seen the blow-up games. If they're going to fully unleash him, that'll be just an interesting team as a whole to see what happens relative to last year. And
I think the biggest thing. Oh, sorry.
No, you go for it.
I was just going to say the biggest thing holding Chase Claypool back, my fear, is that Big Ben's arm isn't going to have it anymore. I think that Chase Claypool could have a DK Metcalf type breakout if he had a quarterback that could comfortably throw the long ball, and I'm afraid that is not something that we're going to see this year.
Yeah, it's very confusing to even figure out what the heck they're going to be doing long term, but this is 1 year, this is redraft, it's best ball. So speaking of kind of this past year, I've thought about this for a long time, and I've always been curious. So zero wide receiver, zero RB, it feels like a lot of these, the in vogue zero strategy, it tends to be based off of the previous season. And, the results that happened, obviously last year, we saw running backs go down at a very high clip. So how much are these strategies informed from just the single prior season, or how much of them are kind of the longer term dynamic for you? Dave.
And I try to look at this as more of a long-term thing. When I actually looked at the data of how running back touches have changed, I broke it down in decade increments. So I wasn't getting, drawn away because of single season outliers. So I broke it down in the last 10 years, 10 years before that, 10 years before that. And that's where you see that the running back usage is just plummeting per player. I had to eat crow last year, because last year was a year where if you went wide receiver early, you were able to get those running backs off of waivers and late in your draft that won it for you. But I'm trying not to let that affect my mindset too much. I'm trying to pay attention to the larger trends more so than what just happened last year.
It's interesting with those larger trends when you start talking about the scat backs, the Naeem Hines and stuff. Again, as much as like what you were saying about zero wide receiver makes total sense, and it's really what I lean towards. But then maybe I've just had Kevin chirping in my ear for so many months now, a year and a half. But I definitely find myself gravitating to man, I'm gonna get that solid running back. Damn it, I wanted Stafford. And then going wide receiver heavy, because I start to see some of that running back value that's around there a little bit late. There's one guy that's coming up that I really like as a dart throw kind of later running back that I'm hoping will be here. My pick in 2, 3, 2, 1. Come on, guy. Then I can pick him. I guess it makes a difference. I don't know if they're listening.
I already know who you're going to take too.
Who do you think is going to be?
James Conner.
I know.
Yeah, of course it's James Conner, without question.
Because you've been chirping in my ear for the last year and a half.
Well, dude, the worst thing is that you pick right before me, Kev. So I actually watch you like scroll over and pull my heart out by clicking like you picked Robbie Anderson. I watched you debate between two guys, one I didn't want at all, and I was just sitting here like, oh, mute me.
It was between him and Boyd, and I looked at my bye weeks, and I'm like, well, I can't have 3 week 10 guys.
Right.
So
I have Joe Mixon, so I was like,
I'll do it next time. I'll do it ASMR. I'll well, we want to try to hit every segment, of viewership here. So
how much do you guys pay attention to bye weeks in best ball drafts? I know this is more best ball strategy as a whole, but I'm curious. All three of you.
I really don't until the final rounds. I'll patch some in the final rounds, but that's not something I'm worrying about too much.
I do if I go with a high-end quarterback or a high-end tight end, and I only plan to supplement them with maybe 1 or 2 other quarterbacks, I make sure, if I'm going to draft just 2 quarterbacks total, I make sure that they don't have the same bye week. But in most cases, I'm not really thinking too hard about it, unless if it's an FC eliminator, a fantasy cares eliminator, and you lose if you have the lowest score in a certain week, then I do care a little bit. But beyond that, in a regular best ball where it's roto points, I really don't think as much. I just want the best players.
And it's underdog roto points. And explain what that is for anybody who doesn't know.
So a lot of true best ball leagues, or the original best ball leagues like best ball 10s, is you're not doing head-to-head matchups each week. You're just accumulating points over the season. So it's your best 11 guys that week goes into your point total, next week point total. So it's not head-to-head matchups. I don't know if this is head-to-head, is it?
No, it's cumulative.
So cumulative, yeah. So in those formats, it's like you can get away with it because, I mean, I know you might have a down week here or there, if you have too many bye weeks, but I'm not thinking as much about it because, if you don't want to skip taking Tyler Boyd, who's just going to have, maybe 50 points in the next closest guy just to, get those extra 10 points for that 1 week, Yeah.
So in theory, then anything that's going to be cumulative points, shouldn't really matter too much about your buys, because even if both of your quarterbacks are out that week, cool. Like you still have all the other weeks. Everybody has a bye week at some point, right?
Right. That's my thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, cumulative. Yeah. You just want your points. You don't care how you really get them. You just want them. So yeah, bye weeks in that regard, I would definitely kind of throw it out the window. But thinking like maybe like FFPC, where it could be something like that, or like the main event, or those are managed, but any kind of head-to-head format with the best ball, then yeah, that's something you want to at least take into account for some bye weeks. Like I just didn't want 3 out of my 5 wide receivers having a week 10 bye week. It just, I don't know, maybe it's just more of the redraft homer in me, but yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, so quickly, just Kevin, while he's on the clock, picking here. Once you make your pick, we're 10 rounds through, so I might as well just do a quick recap of where we're at. And then I do have another question, thinking about what kind of Coop introduced the show, and that's, talking about modified strategies. So Kevin, run down your roster real quick.
All right, so I still have my one quarterback, Pat Mahomes, Aaron Jones, and I did take a running back in the 9th. I took Kenyon Drake. And then I took, Tyreek Hill, Allen Robinson, Jamar Chase, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, Jarvis Landry is my 6 wide receivers, and then my tight end, TJ Hawkinson.
Man, the Landry hate is just so weird. Curtis Samuel going above Landry just feels dirty to me. But
by the way, I got him at pick 111, his ADP, which is Underdog is probably the sharpest ADP, across sites. I got him 19 ahead of ADP, a full round. Like that's insane.
Yeah, that's crazy. All right. I'm just trying to think of just picks right now. So, Kluge's about to be up. So,
I'll go. I picked right back when Kev picked. So I told you guys I was going to take just best available based on my rankings, which I've done this entire time. And oddly enough, I ended up actually only taking 1 wide receiver within my top 6 picks. So I started off, I had the 11th pick. So first round, Cam Akers, second round Joe Mixon, who I'm high on. You can go check out my Twitter at Coop A Fiasco. There's an article there that's on Fantasy Alarm all about Joe Mixon, why I take him there. In the third round, coming all the way back, I took Miles Sanders because I was looking at it and there weren't a whole lot of every down running backs left. Kluge was already taking Chris Carson in that same round. So, I mean, we were already getting to that point where now you're getting into the guys that are splitting. The Josh Jacobs is the picking one of the Jaguars guys. So I went that way. My first wide receiver is Mike Evans. After that, I took one of my top three tight ends, top three quarterbacks, Dak Prescott. Kevin Tompkins took TJ Hawkinson. So I was, the last guy in my tier there is Mark Andrews. I took him. And then since then, as Kluge talked about with, when these zero wide receiver or modified zero wide receivers, now I have to jam on wide receivers. So I went Will Fuller. I took Melvin Gordon, who will be the last running back I take. Then I went Michael Gallup, Mike Williams, just looking for guys that are going to be out there potentially in 2 wide receiver sets at this point. So now I'm just taking stabs at wide receiver.
Very cool. And Kluge's about to pick. So
I had my guy queued up and he dropped to me, and I am more than happy with that pick. He's another guy that just for some reason over the last couple of weeks, Mecole Hardman. Nobody wants to take Mecole Hardman, and I understand that there's some risk there, but when you're drafting a guy in the 11th round, why? I mean, isn't that what you're chasing? Is upside and hoping for a few big weeks here and there? But I started off just smashing running back early, Saquon, Eckler, and Carson, which I'm thrilled with. Julio Jones was just too good of a value for me to pass up at pick 45, so I took him there, and then went back to get my final running back in Josh Jacobs. Since then, I have just smashed wide receiver outside of Aaron Rodgers, dropping to pick 93. I love Aaron Rodgers. As a Bears fan, I've watched this guy just destroy my team for my entire life, and I don't think he's getting any younger. I don't care where he's playing. He can go to Washington or Denver, or it doesn't matter. He's going to be a QB1 just about wherever he plays. So, people are getting nervous, and that's why they're starting to fade him. But I'm more than happy to take advantage of that dip and get Aaron Rodgers. I got heavy exposure on him. But then looking at the rest of my wide receivers here, I try to do a mix of high upside guys and floor guys, because those upside guys aren't going to hit every single week. And when they don't, I want somebody that's going to be able to balance them out a little bit. So that's what Deebo Samuel is, Antonio Brown. Those are my safer guys. And then Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, Mecole Hardman. Those are the guys that I'm just hoping are going to have, a handful of 25 plus point weeks that are going to, help me stay alive.
Sounds good. Like it. So at QB, I have Tom Brady and Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill is really just a pick just to see, I'm really nervous about Arthur Smith being gone. But if Julio does land there with A.J. Brown, I mean, that's going to be amazing. And obviously Tom Brady, is second year in the Bruce Arians offense. And then Dalvin, CEH, and then Mostert, who's always going to be good for a few weeks. That's going to do some 80-yard touchdowns at the fastest speed in the NFL because he is a beast. And then James Conner, excited to see get the RB1 out of that offense. And then Calvin Ridley, Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen. This is the downside is DJ Chark was an auto pick because I'm not used to Underdog, and I went to go click on Matt Stafford as time ran out. So that kind of sucked. I would have much preferred that. And then I just took Marvin Jones because unfortunately I listened far too much to Coop, and Coop was talking about how you just got to take Marvin Jones at his ADP. He's fallen too far. So somehow I've now doubled up on Jacksonville with a rookie quarterback, but their team should be trash. So they're going to be throwing the ball a hell of a lot. That's my hope.
Yeah, my strategy with that is that in these best balls, especially when you get late, you look at these teams that switched quarterbacks and switched offensive coordinators and just take the 2 cheapest guys. I mean, it worked last year with the Panthers. We don't know who Urban Meyer likes, who Trevor Lawrence likes. We don't know. Same thing goes for the Jets. We have no idea with the new coach, new quarterback, the Lions. So I'm willing to take those guys late because even if we think it's Chark, we have no idea what Urban Meyer's thinking. I mean, with the moves he's done so far, do you guys have any idea what he's thinking?
No. We have no idea whatsoever.
I don't think he knows what he's doing.
Kev, you're muted. Kev, you're muted, brother.
I am muted. Holy shit. And I just got, I no idea what Urban Meyer's going to do in the year and a half that he will be Jacksonville's head coach.
getting some Chip Kelly vibes over there. It's I don't really know what's happening.
It's exactly what I'm thinking is he's going to chip. I'm worried about whoever the next head coach of the Jaguars is going to be, because that is going to be a tall order. Whoever has to clean up that mess.
Whoever they have, like they could bring the coach in and ask like why the plays aren't on like picture cards. It's just like a picture of a duck or something.
Oh man, I love it. I'm starting to take some running backs though. I'm taking some shots here. I got just took Jamal Williams, so here come the running backs. They're starting to hey, you know what? Anything behind Swift? I mean, who knows how they're going to run that backfield?
It's true.
That's very, very true.
The coach did say
no love. I've seen this. I've done a few drafts today, and Devontae Parker is consistently dropping into the 130, 140s, going way below his ADP. It's not even a pick that I like. Like, I'm not that crazy about Devontae Parker, but sitting in the 12th round, why not?
Yeah, I thought about it my last pick. I would have been stacking Fuller and Parker, and I mean, at least one of them has to be a top 2 target on the team. Really, I mean, even if you really love Jalen Waddle, one of those guys has to be, kind of a 100 target guy.
Oh, that just threw up everything. God damn. I was hoping to get Jarwin and get Jared Cook, so at least I knew that Jared Cook could, maybe have touchdown, a little bit of upside, and then until Blake Jarwin was fully back to health and maybe full steams ahead. But
I hate
that.
Thanks,
Scott.
But Jeff Bell has been really selling me on Jonnu Smith lately, and I don't feel good about it. But if you're looking for a late round tight end, he makes some pretty strong arguments as to why this guy could be top 5. I've always been a big fan of Jonnu Smith's talent. I'm just not a fan of what's happening in New England this offseason. But hopefully they got some good plans for him. I feel like the risk can definitely pay off this year.
I'll take a stab on him or Henry. I mean, we've seen that offense go both ways, where the Gronk guy, the inline guy, does well, and we've seen it where the move tight end and Aaron Hernandez does really well. So I think they're going to do creative stuff. So at their ADPs, it's worth a stab.
I was sold on Jonnu until they went out and got Hunter Henry the very next day, and then I was just like, what? I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, they're loading up.
Yeah,
what a roller coaster that was.
I was going to go find my tweet history, and I think it was Jonnu Smith was tight end 6 season. I was ready just to anoint, and then I couldn't, a couple hours later, really, I had one of those graveyard 2021 to 2021 Jonnu Smith season.
Yeah,
who took it? Who took Adam Trump?
AJ Dillon. I was pumping up AJ Dillon starting in December as a 2021 RB1. I mean, I don't think anybody really expected Aaron Jones to stay, and then Aaron Jones stayed, and I was like, wow, I'm going to have a lot of receipts getting rubbed in my face next offseason.
Yeah. So I do have a question for the zero RB representative. So when you get into these rounds, right? Say you've already got a couple RBs under your belt that you feel good about. Do you skew more towards guys that have standalone value but maybe low ceilings? So say, let's say a situation like it's always like Jamal Williams, where he might not get the full role even if the other guy gets hurt. Or would you prefer a true a guy that's a true backup, like a Tony Pollard, who might get a little bit of work, but if the starter gets hurt, then he explodes? Which direction do you go when you get in that kind of situation? Do you go for the more automatic, the guy who's going to produce even if there's no injury, or would you skew towards the guy that would produce less outright but might blow up if there's an injury?
Yeah, and it's funny because we just talked about, I took Madison, knowing Dalvin Cook's injury history. If something happens to Dalvin Cook and he's out, several games, Madison has the opportunity. He could be an RB1, for a stretch. And then you look at guys like Kenyon Drake, where something happens to Josh Jacobs. I think that he just goes right into, quality work with passing game work. So yeah, you need standalone guys that have some standalone value, but you can also balance that with guys that have contingent value and that have realistic avenues toward that work. I'm just trying to think of guys like Latavius Murray, who I like him, but I'm just not sure that, he's starting to get a little bit longer in the tooth. Not sure he's going to be slotted for a lot of that work, especially if Taysom Hill is going to be the quarterback. Like, I'm just not sure about that. I'm at 10 seconds and I got to figure out what the hell I want to do. I wanted to take Cole Kmet. So you know what? I'm going to take Denzel Mims.
Yeah, somebody just sniped me on Trotman right before that. Unbelievable.
Sitting at the end of these
We
drafts.
gotta start. Yes, we gotta put more patsies in here, dude. Why we're putting like Scott Simpson in these drafts, dude? We should be putting like scrubs that don't know what they're doing. Next time we're getting 10 randoms off Reddit.
Works for me.
I've never done a best ball draft before. It could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, who wants to learn how to do a best ball? Take QB.
$5.
Best
You wanna
ball
get
101. Let's go.
You want to get as many
Something,
QBs as you can.
I think I don't even want to admit how many best ball leagues that I've done, but I think that Scott and I are probably in 30 to 40 leagues together already. Like every time I drop a link that I'm in a best ball link, Scott hops in. If he drops one, I hop in. Like I know who Scott's going to pick before I think even he knows who he's going to pick at this point.
Is Underdog primarily what you're using for those, or best ball 10s, or what?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Underdog.
Yeah, I love Underdog. It's just so simple to use. Now Sleeper has best ball, so I'll check those out at least. But yeah, I think Underdog, the mock draft like that we've known maybe 10 years ago, that's out the window. Like Fantasy Football Calculator and Yahoo, running those ESPN mocks. Like it only costs $3, and you're drafting and you can win money. I mean, say what you want, but you're gonna get nobody's gonna be taking Tim Tebow 101, maybe they will, who knows, but unless it's a Pete Overs at randomizer, maybe Tim Tebow goes 101. But yeah, it's the best bang for your buck. I mean, just getting real draft experience going in here. I mean, what's better than that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it just makes the stakes a little bit higher because everybody that's done a mock draft before knows how it goes.
Right.
1/3 of the people are just auto drafting. The other third are dropping out halfway through. And realistically, I'm probably throwing in the towel around the 12th round when I realize that, the majority of people are mock drafting. So this makes it a lot more fun. Just having a little bit of stakes in there, just make people try a little bit harder. And I think that you get a, more realistic experience.
It changes everything, dude. And it's funny how it is. Like, it doesn't matter if it's for $20 or for $5. Like, I'm still trying exactly as hard. You know what I mean? It's like if you put an app on, an app wants to charge me $1, I'm like, $1? Are you kidding me? Like I just like, even if I throw $1 in the tip jar, it's funny how when it comes to mock drafts, like $1 changes everything. So I'm a big fan of the put a little money on it and then let's do it for real rather than let's see what happens if I take 4 tight ends in a row when you go on like Yahoo or whatever, So
I've done draft or like leagues of all formats and buy-ins or whatever. I feel like $300 buy-in, that's where the kind of threshold is where it stops being fun. Like once people have more than 300 of their own dollars on the line, then it goes from like having fun playing fantasy football to like ruining friendships and not showing up to weddings. Like it really changes once you hit that $300 buy-in threshold.
Yeah.
It's like you're going into like Call of Duty, like Warzone. It's like it's sweats. It's literally sweats.
Only one person wins, dog.
Yeah. Oh man! Oh, I just got swiped on Cohen.
As I'm scrolling, trying to figure out where the heck I want to go. Well, I'll wait until after to have you pump that. But so, I guess just kind of bringing it all back. In reality, in most of your drafts, do you find that you are going with a modified approach? And by modified, is that 1 or 2 of the position that you absolutely hate and you want to burn to the ground? For each of you, Kevin and Kluge.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm sorry. I was scrolling through. So I'm sorry. Say it again.
No, you're good. I forgot you're about to be up. So actually, Kluge, I'm going to throw it to you just since he's up. So in your real drafts, when you're doing this, do you tend to actually go, 3 running backs back to back, or do you, throw in a DeAndre Hopkins at 208, which I'm only using that because that's the one example I have of you doing that. Where do you actually realistically land on this in drafts?
I try to be as fluid as possible. Obviously, just the numbers tell me that having those early running backs is going to help you, get through injuries and all that. So that's what I lean towards. But I think that you have to be fluid all the time. So, I've had some drafts where all of the guys I like are getting sniped, and I'm not willing to drop 2 tiers below to grab a running back when there's a wide receiver still on the board that I really like. So, yeah, I mean, so fluid, yes, and I don't know, I don't even know if modified is the appropriate response, but you can look at my overall rankings, and I just have running backs much higher. I mean, the first when you look at my overall rankings, I don't think I have a single wide receiver until the 10th or 11th overall pick, and that's because I would never even think about taking anybody but a wide receiver or a running back with those first 9 or 10 picks.
Does that include Travis Kelce?
No, this take rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but Travis Kelce is not my tight end one. It's actually Darren Waller. I am a huge fan of Darren Waller, just because of the lack of competition there. I mean, there's no wide receivers. Like, I'm not worried about Bryan Edwards or John Brown or Henry Ruggs, and Waller is the focal point of that team, where Travis Kelce is still going to be splitting carries with or splitting targets with Tyreek Hill. So, Waller is my number one guy, but even Waller is somebody that I'm content taking usually in the mid-second.
Can I weigh on this modified topic, Gary?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you're the modified expert on this show.
Yeah, my modified opinion is that once you're using the word modified, you're no longer doing that strategy. That's just a fantasy draft. Like, you can't just go, oh, I'm going to do JJ Zacharyason's modified late round QB. So I'll take Patrick Mahomes, but then I won't take another QB for like a really long time. Like
modified zero running back, but I'm going to take Aaron Jones in the first round.
Wow. Shots fired.
But for real though, it's like, dude, that's just a fantasy draft. Like, the whole strategy revolves around not taking DeAndre Hopkins in the second round. So in my opinion, we can just forget the modified stuff. It's okay to take best available. You know what I mean? Yeah. Realistically, what you guys to a certain degree are doing is you don't think that running backs in the early part of the draft have value, so you have them farther down in your rankings than most people because based on their value. So you're still kind of drafting best available based on your rankings, Yeah. But obviously, for the sake of what we do, it makes it a lot easier to say these are my 0 RB targets. And I even agree, it's very valuable to know those targets if you find yourself in a spot where I am right now, where I need those guys, So I definitely, there's huge value to the labels, but once you get into the word modified and stuff, I'm out, So that's my take on that.
With my second to last pick of the draft, I'm going to go with my second, let's hope that Julio lands on this team pick at quarterback. And I just took Jimmy Garoppolo because, oh my God, it would be so lights out. Even though, hell, it could be Trey Lance for all we know, but I think they're going to do everything they can to build up Jimmy's trade value.
You guys might see the move that I made. This is one that I've been doing in a lot of drafts, is taking Deshaun Watson and Cam Newton. So typically I don't like having 3 quarterbacks, but I feel like in this situation, I get Aaron Rodgers, who's my stud quarterback. And then the way I see it, I think that Deshaun Watson is going to play. I just think that he's going to see an early season suspension. I also think that Mac Jones is going to supplant Cam Newton at some point in the season. So I kind of like stacking those two together because I feel like I'll get Cam Newton early on in the year and then Deshaun Watson hopefully in the second half of the year.
I dig it.
Sure.
I dig it.
I do not think he's going to play, but I appreciate it.
I mean, but what if he does? I mean,
this for upside in baseball.
This exact time of year, 2 years ago, this exact time of year, no one thought Tyreek Hill was going to play, dude. His son broke his arm, and the voicemail came out, and anyone that picked Tyreek Hill during June of that year destroyed in best ball. So I'm with you on that, Kluge. I think I tweeted something similar. I'll take Watson.
Yeah. And I don't think that he's going to play either, realistically. But I feel like when you're playing best ball and you're doing these drafts, you're not going for a floor. You're going for the ceiling. And getting somebody with Deshaun Watson's ceiling in the 15th round, if he does end up playing, that's a league winner right there. You're getting a guy that's going to be putting up QB1 numbers every single week that cost you hardly anything.
That's where all the Viking Dave took all the tight ends. He's got 4 tight ends. I was wondering where they all went.
Disgusts me. He definitely took Trotman too.
I really like Tanyan.
He did.
I love the Rodgers Tanyan. How do you feel about this? As a Packers fan here, Kevin, is Aaron Rodgers going to be in Green Bay next year? I think so personally. I'd be
probably. if they were going to trade him, the window was the draft. I mean, It's out of that now. I don't think you can get anything close to what you could have gotten in the draft. So I think fences got to be mended. I mean, it's going to happen. They got to get to the table. I mean, we looked at Russell Wilson, say what he said right after the Super Bowl. And then, him and Seahawks got together and, they mended fences and now they're fine. I think once Rodgers and Gutekunst, Murphy get to the table, I think they're going to be fine and play out this season. And then we'll just do it all over again next season.
Yep. I mean, and that's the thing is, being a Bears fan, being a fan of the NFC North and following the NFC North, I feel like this happens like every few years where there's this just Rodgers seems like he's unhappy with the team and everyone starts freaking out. And then week one, he comes out and he's still Aaron Rodgers. And this one feels a little bit different, but at the end of the day, I think that he'll still be the week one starter for the Packers.
Yep, I agree.
That's why I'm upset I got sniped on Tunyon, because that is one of my favorite value stacks is Aaron Rodgers and Robert Tunyon.
Yeah. I think in this format, I'm usually not a big Tunyon guy, but in best ball, best ball washes away all the sins of touchdown dependentness. So I'm a fan of this format.
Otherwise,
it's just not enough targets, man. If you think about redraft last year, he was scoring all those touchdowns, which is why everyone loved him. And then if you started him in the championship week, he just pulled your pants right down with one catch and no touchdown. So I do worry about that. But in best ball, I don't care at all. Touchdowns, that's what I want. So I'm all for Tony.
Take out that Falcons game too.
The Falcons game, yeah. I mean, I guess that was pretty much all his points. But he scored touchdowns. Those were 3 touchdowns. 8 other games he scored a touchdown too. So it's kind of hard to take that away. It's just the bad games are so bad when you're getting 3 targets a game.
I mean, to do what he did with 59 targets is just ridiculous. Just next level efficiency. And you really think that Aaron Rodgers is going to have a 9.1 touchdown rate again? He beat out 2011. I mean, come on, let's just be realistic here. I mean, the dude's going to be 38 by the end of the season. I mean,
but he could.
He could. What's the probability though?
Can I ask you guys a quick question? Because it's my last pick, and apparently that's really important to me. And I only have Jared Cook at tight end. So I'm debating between Chris Herndon, Kendrick Bourne, and Wayne Gallman, because I feel like they all have upside, but I feel like Bourne's probably out because what upside does he really have in that offense?
So you're just
going to go with Herndon. Yeah, I only have one tight end because I'm new to best ball and kind of just all of a sudden was one tight end.
I think you made the right pick. I like Herndon.
I like Herndon. I like Mo Alley Cox a lot too. We were talking about it, touchdowns or something that you want to chase in best ball. Mo Alley Cox isn't somebody that really gets me too excited as far as redraft goes, but for best ball, if Carson Wentz if Zach Ertz doesn't go there, right now Mo Alley Cox could be the number 1 tight end there, and that dude is just a touchdown machine. We know Carson Wentz favors the tight end, so I'm a big fan of Mo Alley Cox with that last round pick.
Yeah, he's a basketball player. I mean, with Herndon, if you look at Adam Gase, he makes his tight ends block on so many pass plays. He made Mike Gesicki block on 17% of his pass plays, and then the following year under Brian Flores, Mike Gesicki blocked on 1% of his pass plays. 1. So I see Herndon blocking on 24% of his pass plays last year. 100 routes he could have run. Herndon, his ceiling's probably not super high, but he has to be better this year than he was last year. So I do like Herndon and Mo Alley Cox in this format. Of course, like I said, basketball player, touchdowns, it's not that hard to see him catching a bunch of touchdowns this year from Wentz. So both those guys last round.
A grown ass man.
Totally. Big dude.
Terrifying.
All right. Do we want to do one last recap? I just realized that it's now the 3rd time, and I hope I'm not beating a dead horse with that. But I think just do it one last time, and then Kevin, you should tell everybody what we're doing on Friday.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'm going to start this off. Started it off with Aaron Jones, despite the subtle mocking there from Mr. Kluge. But Tyreek Hill, Allen Robinson. Now I took Patrick Mahomes and Hawkinson. I love Hawkinson. Patrick Mahomes is QB1 for me. I mean, positional advantages that you can get. Taking those wide receivers, and then stacking Hill and Mahomes, which stacking the Chiefs is very hard to do, especially an underdog, but at least getting a skinny stack there. And then Jamar Chase, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel, trying to get some quantity with quality wide receivers to kind of guard against, some injuries or downslides or whatever the case may be. Kenyon Drake has an avenue toward getting a lot of work. I think he'll have work at the outset with Josh Jacobs. Jamal Williams, Jarvis Landry, Justin Fields, I really like. I think he's going to get the job much sooner than people anticipate. You could even be the week 1 starter. Who knows? Denzel Mims, McKissick, John Brown, who I think is much better than Ruggs and will show that this year. Eric Ebron and Javian Hawkins, who's the dart throw, but could find his way into a role potentially in Atlanta.
All right. Dave?
So I went with 3 quarterbacks, which I don't normally like to do, but the guys that I like early, Lamar Jackson, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, those are guys that I'm okay reaching for a little bit, and they all got sniped way earlier than I expected. So I missed out on those guys. Got Aaron Rodgers as my QB1, and then went with the Deshaun Watson, Cam Newton duo as my QB2, which is very high risk, very high reward. So we'll see how that ends up playing out. But then running backs, I went with the studs early: Saquon, Austin Eckler, Chris Carson, Josh Jacobs. I'm not crazy about Josh Jacobs, but I think that he is still going to see 175 carries or so. I think he's still going to get the goal line work, which is valuable, and they still have an elite offensive line. So a lot's been made about Kenyon Drake and how it just totally sabotaged his value. And while I think that it did hit his value slightly, getting picked at 52 is just unbelievable to me that he's falling that far. And then the wide receivers, I'm really excited about this wide receiver group, anchored with Julio Jones. We got Chase Claypool for the upside, Deebo Samuel for the floor. Antonio Brown is another guy that I've been consistently taking in the 90s, and he dropped all the way to me at 100. So I'm very happy with that value for Antonio Brown. 6 touchdowns in his last 6 games. And he's a guy that I think is going to have, his floor is basically going to be a trap door. But I think that in best ball, he's going to have some huge weeks that get me really excited. Darnell Mooney, I think that he's going to take a huge step forward with Justin Fields. Mecole Hardman, he's going to have his big games. Devontae Parker, one that I wasn't too crazy about, but, he dropped a full 2 rounds. I felt like it would have just been foolish to pass up on that. And then with my last 2 wide receivers, going with 2 high upside guys that I can do a mini stack with Aaron Rodgers by taking Amari Rodgers and Alan Lazard. And then the tight ends, Jonnu Smith and Rob Gronkowski. Like we talked about, I'm gravitate towards tight ends that catch a lot of touchdowns. And I think Jonnu Smith and Rob Gronkowski, not guys that I'm crazy about in redraft, but I think they will have a path to a lot of touchdowns this year.
For sure. And Coop?
All right. So first off, I just want to say that I said that I don't care about bye weeks, and then I managed to take 9 guys that have either bye week 7 or 14. So everyone can just take everything I said on this podcast and throw it out the window. So I started off taking Dak Prescott as my quarterback. Instead of taking a second quarterback, I went on a long-winded rant about modified 0 wide receiver and running back, and didn't take another one. So I ended up taking Tyrod Taylor just because, he's a very good chance that he could start. For running back, I took all guys. I didn't take many guys, but I have 5 that are going to play. You know what I mean? The first 3 should have the full role or close to it. The other 2, Melvin Gordon should start, and at the very least, he's going to split. It's even if the other guy becomes the starter, he has value. James White, of course, it's always a split backfield, so he's going to have catches. I took Mike Evans as the only wide receiver in the early rounds, and then I just jammed on a lot of guys, like Kluge talked about. That I did like a combination of guys that are best ball typical guys and the guys that have pretty good floors. So Will Fuller is your quintessential boom bust best ball player, where this is his most valuable format. He's going to come up with a hamstring in a game at some point and get you 0 points, but it doesn't really matter in this format. Michael Gallup, as far as we know, is still in 2 wide receiver sets. Last year, CeeDee Lamb only played 64% of them. It'll probably be more, but I don't know if he's going to take that full role away from Gallup, and he's just going to come off the field. So I still like Gallup. Mike Williams, another best ball guy. T.Y. Hilton, a definite best ball guy. Nelson Aguilar, a best ball. I mean, pretty much I just took all best ball guys from this point on. So, but I mean, like, look at the stack of Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards, right? Darren Waller is going to lead that team in targets, almost certainly, right? But after that, they no longer have Tyrell Williams. Nelson Aguilar's gone. So it's basically, maybe I don't know if John Brown can even sustain a huge target total. So one of those guys at least should probably be somewhere in that 100 target range. Kevin, do you want to say something? Look like you're about
he
to
will, damn it.
Okay,
John Brown is ageless.
Yeah, the ageless John Brown. Perfect. Smoky
34
Brown.
now. How old is
So,
he? 33, 34?
Yeah. Speaking of,
Oh, he ain't that old.
I think he's like
No.
45. So speaking of the 45-year-old John Brown, they let him leave. He signed for $3.75 million 1 year to play that flanker role. They brought in Emmanuel Sanders and paid him $6 million. So it seems like they're expecting Emmanuel Sanders to fill that John Brown role, and John Brown was playing 80 to 90% of the snap when healthy. He had multiple games with 15 plus points. So I'm all for it. At tight end, I took Mark Andrews. He was my number 5 tight end, and right after Hawkinson goes, as I typically do, is once Hawkinson goes, I just take Andrews. And then my last tight end, Gerald Everett. He doesn't have an amazing ceiling because they have 2 pass catchers in Metcalf and Lockett, but they brought him in. He played for the quarterback coach or the pass game coordinator from the Rams. That's now the offensive coordinator for Seattle, so he knows a bunch of the plays. Russell Wilson's a touchdown anomaly machine. So 35 plus touchdown passes, I think 3 years in a row or close to it. So I like Everett in this format.
All right.
Yeah. And also, if you're looking up John Brown on Google, you have to put in NFL because they came up across the abolitionist John Brown. Definitely not the same guy, but he is 31.
The abolitionist is actually younger than John Brown.
Wow.
Okay, it's the abolitionist.
I can't even be mad at that.
Yeah.
The abolitionist is the youngest, and then John Brown, and then Calvin Ridley is the oldest.
And then Frank Gore.
And then Frank Gore. All right, Gary, what do you got?
So starting with quarterback, we're going with Tom Brady and Ryan Tannehill with Jimmy Garoppolo. Pretty much one is just my anchor, and the other 2 are for high upside. We'll see what they can do. And then we're gonna have Dalvin, CEH, and then I love Raheem Mostert. James Conner is kind of my soup du jour of the season because I think he can take over that role, and Chase Edmonds is just going to stay the same. So James Conner, dude, he was a darling 2 years ago. My random pick of the entire draft was Amandre Stevenson. I love that they don't even have a picture for him. Like, what? Maybe he just can't fit in the picture because he's so big. I can't tell. But I'll take LeGarrette Blount 2.0, and hopefully, we'll go on the low estimate. It'll probably have like 16, 18 touchdowns, like no big deal. So seal of the draft. And then Ty Johnson, like, who's ahead of Ty Johnson in that pecking order right now? Tevin Coleman, like my least favorite running back in the NFL. So Ty Johnson has some run there, hopefully. And then Calvin Ridley, Deontay, Adam Thielen, love them all. DJ Chark and Marvin Jones, just because one of them I think will hit with Trevor Lawrence. We just got to figure out which one. Traquan, I want to see what he can do with Winston's arm, assuming it's going to be Winston. And then I like Jamison Crowder. I think I have him in almost every single one of my FCEs because Corey Davis just injured, was his shoulder just strained. Jamison Crowder is just going to become a relief valve for Zach Wilson as Elijah Moore and Denzel Mims are still coming along. And if James Crowder ends up leaving the team, cool. Like who knows what's going to happen there. And then at tight end, just taking dice rolls. I love Jared Cook just because, athletic freak. Whew, that was crazy loud. I don't know if there's a thunderstorm rolling through. And it just,
I did hear that.
And then Chris Herndon. Apparently, I love the Jets this year, so let's go. Hail to the Jets.
Apparently, holy crap! You're week 6 and 7 bye weeks, by the way, and your wide receivers.
So yeah, hopefully, week 6, Coop can play me, and then I'll play him week 7 and 14 or something like that. Since this is apparently now head to head, and bye weeks matter.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll see. But all right, well, that was our drive. I just want to thank, first of all, the people that we did recruit on Twitter for getting in this draft with us, who we did weather a little bit of a hiccup last night where our original draft did run. That team did not look so good when I saw that in the morning, but we got everybody all back together here to run it back tonight. So thank you all. And Dave, my friend, good to chop it up with you. Let us know again to top it off here where we can find all your work.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. That's Dave Kluge. And you can find me on Football Guys and Fantasy Bros doing rankings and articles. And then you can find me doing a live show just about every single day on Twitter.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Thank you so much for, joining us tonight. And, I know you this is the kind of the end of the road, at least for right now for you. The Kluge Tour 21 is going to take a quick pit stop here, for the next week or two. So get some rest, my friend. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Before we sign off again, give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Again, we are giving away a Scott Fishbowl 11 spot. So find my pinned tweet on Twitter at KTompkinsII. Take a screenshot of your subscription and send it over to us here at that thread. And we will enter you in and give away a spot on Friday night and hope you win it. Gary, Coop, anything else before we get out of here?
Best Ball Mania draft on Friday night. It'll be Kevin and I. So I feel like watching some. That was a perfect gong noise, man.
That's my. I always hit it because there's like a gap where my mouse is right here. So I hit it once a show.
There we go. Anyway, so Friday night, 8:30 Central. We'll be doing Best Ball Mania, and that's where we'll be announcing the winner of the Scott Fishbowl spot. And then we have some really cool shows coming up down the road. Don't have specific dates, but we're going to do some Scott Fishbowl content. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah. Yep. And then start some divisional content as well with some cool people, and we will announce that. But for Mr. Dave Kluge from Football Guys, for Gary Haddow, for Andrew Cooper, I am Kevin Tompkins. Thank you for tuning into Lightning Round. Have a great night, everybody.